poker players. Today we're going to be taking a look at a hand between LLinusLLove and PR0DIGY played heads up at 100-200. So let's just take a look at the hand. LLinusLLove is in the small blind and makes it 2.5x. PR0DIGY makes the call. Flop comes 9 of clubs, 5 of clubs, 10 of hearts. A semi-connected flop here. LLinusLLove bets 40% of the pot on the flop. PR0DIGY makes the call. Turn comes 6 of diamonds, bringing in the 8-7 for the straight. PR0DIGY checks. LLinusLLove bets full pot here. And PR0DIGY raises to about 3x that raise. LLinusLLove makes the call. And the river comes the king of clubs, bringing in the flushes, of course, and also queen jack for the straight. PR0DIGY bets all in for what is essentially a pot-sized bet left in Linus's stack. And Linus makes the call. And what they show up with, PR0DIGY has 8-3 of clubs for the rivered flush, and the turned combo draw, which he raised. Seems pretty good. And LLinusLLove shows up with a bluff catcher, the jack 10 of clubs here for the middle pair, and ends up losing the hand. My initial thoughts on this is the jack 10 makes a decent bluff catcher here. The jack of hearts blocks the queen jack for the rivered straight, but it also might be blocking some of the bluffs for out of position here. And the 10 of clubs makes a good blocker, blocking some of the 2 pairs, of course, that PR0DIGY may be shipping here, as well as the flushes that he may be raising on the turn, with the combo draws on the turn with the 10 of clubs. So we'll take a look at this in GTO Plus and see what we can make of this hand. So let's take a look at the range we set up in GTO Plus. We have the in position heads up range for LLinusLLove on the button, and the out of position range in the big blind for PR0DIGY here. 10-9-5 flop. Here's the tree that we built. We have multiple bet sizing and donk bets allowed, and we solve it down to 0.1% just to make sure that we're super accurate right here. And looking at the flop strategy, we can see there's no donk betting from out of position here in PR0DIGY's shoes on this 10-9-5 board. It doesn't quite meet the threshold for that. And LLinusLLove should be following through betting for the 40% size at 66.6% of the time. We can see Jack 10 gets in there. It's mixed along with the top pairs, but top pairs mostly favoring betting here. Mixing them in with our strongest hands like 2 pairs and sets, which are full frequency bets. And then checking back on the flop or more like our middle pairs and weak pairs and ace highs and stuff like that, just trying to navigate the showdown. And of course we balance that with a bunch of bluffs, favoring ones with overcards to the 10, a little bit more backdoor equity or just the pure straight draws. So facing the bet, we can see that the flush draws from out of position are all continuing. The 8-3 suited in particular should be mixing, raising some of the time. You know, approximately 27% of the time should be mixing in some of those raises with the flush draws out of position. In terms of the thresholds, pretty much all the weak pairs are continuing. You might be able to fold deuce-deuce on a flop like this to the c-bet. And then your ace highs, things with the backdoor flush draw, are going to be considering continuing here. Some of the weakest ones still folding. And then, you know, things with 2 overcards continuing. Maybe a good overcard and a backdoor flush draw is kind of the threshold that you have here. But something like Jack 4 with kind of a crappy overcard and even with the backdoor flush draw, you're gonna have to find some folds with. So PR0DIGY does call the flop bet, and we get the 6 of diamonds turn. And there's no donk betting on this turn card here, even though the 8-7 comes in. It's sort of well represented in both ranges, and ranges are still quite wide, so no player has like a distinct nut advantage here. And we can see Linus should be polarizing his turn betting strategy, so he gets that right, going for the large 100% pot bet. We can even consider going up to almost 2x the pot with some of our hands. We do find that while top pair, our 10x is betting fairly frequently. The Jack 10 is actually a pure check back in this case, but you know, something like Queen 10 gets in there, so this is kind of a bit hard to find in your strategy. You know, Jack 10 with the flush draw is still continuing betting with all that equity. And yeah, favoring the checkbacks with the mid pairs, a lot of the weak pairs, some 6x getting in there, ace highs checking back. And our bluffs mainly coming from you know, 8x, 7x region. Those have the gut shot, as well as like the double overcard region, which just have pretty good equity against one pair hands in the range, as well as, you know, like queen jack, king queen. These are all gutters, right? So these are high equity bluff hands, and then just giving up with some of our garbage. So we'll look at what happens if Linus decides to bet the jack 10 a bit later, but for now we're just going to continue with the hand and say he bets 100% pot. And here, actually, Prodigy does find the correct check raise with 8-3 suited here. Some of our flush draws are check raising, and we're favoring the ones with the combo draws, so ones with 7 or the 8 here. Combo draws really dominate our check raise bluff range here, except for maybe some queen 2, some king 2, that kind of stuff. So Prodigy does raise the large size, which the solver likes, and we get a call, and we get the king of clubs river. And now Prodigy should be following through with blocks with some of the straights that he makes on the river, the 8-7 in particular, but shoving some of his flushes. Basically, the solver prefers block bet here when the flush comes in. We don't really have too many bluffs, I guess, and in position make some flushes themselves. But we can see that the 8-4, 8-3, these flushes are going to be jamming some of the time, and our bluffs are coming from things like queen 8 with a club, jack 8 with a club, these missed straight draws on the turn. And for the block size, some of the 9x with the 8 or 7 blocking the straight. And actually betting some 10x here, which is a bit odd, shoving the queen 10. Not sure if this is a bit of a merge, or he's turning it into a bluff here with the club blocker, it seems. Okay, so facing the all-in bet, Linus actually should be playing pretty tight here. We can see most of the middle pair, the 10x here, just folding. Something like 10-8 with the 8 of clubs considered calling, but you know, a lot of it just folding here. Folding the over pairs at some frequency, and even folding the majority of the 2 pairs here. We just have, you know, better things to call with. We have some sets, as well as just a bunch of combos of the straights, and our range by the time we get to an all-in bet is just saturated with flushes. We can just really call pretty strong hands here. So Linus shouldn't really have to be digging that deep into his bluff catching unless he thinks there's an over bluff going on here, which is hard to find what he's thinking, where the over bluffs are coming through, because with the king of clubs on the river, all the flush draws get there, a bunch of the straights get there, like the queen jack and stuff like that, as well as some of his bluffs on the turn make a king pair, say like the king queen or king jack, that he might be check raising. And he might consider shoving those on the river. In fact, in GTO land, you know, he doesn't really have many of those bluffs with the king, but you know, king 10 is still betting at least. So let's see exactly what Linus should be doing with the jack 10 combo. So let's node lock this and say he does bet the turn with the jack 10. All of his combos the jack 10. So let's solve this, and we'll wait a bit for it to solve. Okay, it's solved down, and say Linus bets now the turn with his jack 10 of clubs, faces the raise, and actually he should be folding the turn at a high frequency with the 10x here. Really doesn't like that jack blocker. Out of positions bluff raises include queen jack offsuit, jack 8 offsuit at a high frequency, as well as he has some of this weak 10x here that he'd really like villain to have here. So jack 10 really doesn't do a good job of unblocking the bluffs here, so it favors the fold. But let's say that he does call the jack 10, so we'll no log this once more, calling the Jack 10. Okay, now that's solved. And the question now is whether, if he gets to the river, whether the Jack 10 is a good bluff catcher against the all-in size. And it finds that it's not. Again, some of the bluffs coming from that like Jack 8 region, kind of these main bluffs, Jack 8 offsuit. And you really want villain to have like 10-8, this kind of thing, to be betting into you some of this value that you beat. So since out of position isn't going to be value betting the two pairs for the all-in size, the 10 really isn't a great blocker. It doesn't get rid of these combos really. Out of position is going with the straights and flush pluses on the river here. So really the bluff catchers that they're favoring are, you know, queens and jacks at some frequency, double blocking the straights that can come in, as well as having like a, and it seems you don't want the club blocker here, assuming that the bluffs from out of position are coming from that region, I suppose. And yeah, you can just kind of call based on absolute hand strength here. Really, you have enough combos of straights and flushes to defend yourself here, just calling all the flushes and straights. And you don't have to reach so far into these regions, the one pair regions, on when the flush comes in on the river and all the straights get there. It just isn't necessary. However, Linus could have some read on this being an overbluff, though it's hard to see exactly where those bluffs are coming from. All right, that's it. That's all, and I'll see you guys in the streets.